Welcome, everyone. This is Joe Dager, the host of the Business 901 podcast. With me today is Dr. Keith Sawyer, one of the country's leading scientific experts on creativity. Dr. Sawyer is the Morgan Distinguished Professor in Educational Innovations at the University of North Carolina. He has published 14 books, most notably, or at least to me, is his book Group Genius, that showed us to be more creative in collaborative group settings, how to change organizations for the better, and how to tap into our reserves of creativity. He followed that book up with Zig Zag, which identifies the 8 stages of the creative process and contains over 100 techniques to enhance your personal creativity. Dr. Sawyer, I'm honored that you could join me today.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Most of all these creative processes and the things I read about, it talks about drawing it out, writing it on paper, okay, these group sessions. But I live in a virtual world, okay? Will that going to hurt my creativity? Can I be just as creative?
Well, I'd say that's one key finding of creativity research is that it helps drive the process forward if you externalize your developing thought process. You put it out in some visible form, and what it then enables is it enables you to reflect on the ideas that came out of your own mind and then to have a dialogue with them. It's hard to have the same effective dialogue if everything stays in your mind. So having that external representational form gives you that opportunity to interact with it, almost like having a conversation. But as long as it's visible or manifest, perhaps even in 3 dimensions, you could do it on a computer screen, especially if you have a Microsoft Windows 10. You can do it with your finger. You can do it with a pad of paper. A lot of creators still prefer to use a notepad. If you do it 3-dimensionally, perhaps, you could use a clay or marshmallows. But absolutely, you can do it on a computer screen. It works just as well. The key is to make sure it's separate from you, that you're externalizing. And I should say a second key is you're not generating something external as the goal of your process or as the endpoint, but you're externalizing your process all the way through, way before you know where it's going to end up. So then the dialogue with the external representation is part of the process. It's not the endpoint of the process.
Should we create more of an atmosphere in business and push forward with the ideas of creativity, or like an idea quota? I mean, we have a sales quota to try to get more ideas. Is there ways that we can accelerate ideas in that for people?
What I first think about when I hear that question is incentives, right? And incentive systems in organizations. And there's a lot of research on how would you incentivize creativity? What sort of incentive structures would you have in place if you wanted to maximize creativity? And a lot of the first ideas people come up with actually are counterproductive. For example, if you reward people for having more ideas, or if you reward them for having good ideas, that tends to reduce creativity of individuals, and it reduces the creativity of an organization. And that's counterintuitive, right? Because in most organizations' incentive systems, if I want more of something, I should reward that something, right? So it's a complicated story of how you would design the incentives. I guess that's the key message I would say, is that it's complex and a little subtle, because you can't simply reward, or in your sense, your suggestion of having a quota, right? It's our expectation of you, every employee, that each week you will have 10 ideas. That doesn't work.
But we should do something to bring it to the forefront, though, right?
Yeah. What can you do if you're leading an organization to foster probably what every management consultant says about everything, but it starts with culture. And if you get the culture right, these creative processes will flow naturally. If you don't get the culture right, it really doesn't matter what else you do, because you're not going to overcome the culture. So I'd say that's where to start. And then the culture, of course, comes from the leader and the leader's style. That's the main goal of a leader, just about anyone in management consulting will tell you is to foster a culture and set a shared vision. So the culture that fosters innovation and creativity, again, a lot of things I'll say or other people are saying as well. There's got to be a culture of welcoming failure and of risk-taking. This is one reason that rewarding good ideas doesn't work, because this zigzagging process that I've studied involves a lot of dead ends and involves a lot of, well, what sometimes people call failures, but I prefer to think of them as dead ends or ideas, paths that, let's say, remain unfulfilled. And, you can't reward only the successful ideas, because the successful ideas emerge from this bottom-up process. Most of what's bubbling up either isn't an idea or it's not a good idea. For example, I've just learned about this not long ago, that some organizations actually reward people for terminating a project. In other words, for a failed project. The one that's made the most media attention is Google's Alphabet/X. I think they call it the Moonshot Unit, where they have publicized this policy of rewarding failure and terminating projects, which I think that's aligned with research.
What's the best way for someone to learn more about what you're doing, keeping track of it, and maybe information about the book? Is there a particular website or anything?
If anyone's interested in creativity and innovation, I hope you'll follow my blog, my Twitter handle. My blog post is keithsawyer.wordpress.com. You can link to everything from my website, which is my own name. It's keithsawyer.com, which will keep you up to date on my keynote talks and my consulting engagements and my latest publications. My Twitter handle is Dr. Keith Sawyer, Dr. Keith Sawyer. By the time I got around to getting on Twitter, Keith Sawyer was already taken. I got my domain name back in 2004. It's keithsawyer.com. That was before, I guess, people were thinking about it. So yeah, please go to my homepage, keithsawyer.com. Check out my blog. Follow me on Twitter, and you'll get the latest information about what's going on in creativity and innovation.
I admire your work. I'm jealous that you get to work on the North Carolina campus. I have hardly ever been to a prettier campus. And
it is beautiful here, yeah.
This podcast will be available in the Business 901 iTunes store and the Business 901 blog site. So thanks everyone for listening.